what? We don't like the prospects of a currency that is indebted as you are, with really no prospect of ever paying that back other than inflation and inflating away the currency, and you blur the metrics by which inflation is gauged. We're going to go a different direction. And if that indeed happens and the dollar gets globally dumped because they're no longer needed to be held or stockpiled, and they're losing value as some players start dumping, and then others, and then others, and then others, and all of a sudden the dollar starts to really get crippled and lose value, and they hit our shores, creating a massive increase in the amount of dollars that hit our shores because there's way more outside the country than in, as the stockpiling of dollars to buy oil has necessitated that. The byproduct of that is spiked interest rates to the moon to compensate for that inflation, which then blows up not only stocks, bonds, and real estate and the dollar, but the banking system as well.
In the world of finance and global currency, Andy Schectman, a seasoned financial expert, presents a compelling narrative about the potential downfall of the US dollar. Schectman delves into the possibility of the dollar being globally dumped due to its massive debt, lack of clear repayment strategy, and the manipulation of inflation metrics. He warns of a catastrophic scenario where a flood of dollars returns to the US, spiking interest rates and causing a financial meltdown that could implode stocks, bonds, real estate, the banking system, and the very fabric of the US economy. As we prepare to listen to Schectman's insights, the stage is set for a deeper exploration into this looming financial crisis and its far-reaching implications. Now let's hear Andy Schectman.
How do you pay back that debt? What do? You just, my mentor, Richard Russell, always used to say that, and this was 15 years ago, that the Fed is screwed and they have two choices: inflate or die, inflate or default, print or die. What about option number 3, find a villain? You incentivize these folks by weaponizing the dollar, telling Saudi Arabia and the rest of the OPEC countries, hey, we're going green, we don't need you anymore. And then you create massive divisiveness in this country. You create a situation where what it means to be an American, what inspired people, even probably like yourself when you were young, to dream of being an American is no longer maybe the vision or the thought that it once was. And you inspire this type of union that is being born. And if indeed they did make the switch where, hey, you know what? We don't like the prospects of a currency that is indebted as you are, with really no prospect of ever paying that back other than inflation and inflating away the currency, and you blur the metrics by which inflation is gauged, we're going to go a different direction. And if that indeed happens and the dollar gets globally dumped because they're no longer needed to be held or stockpiled, and they're losing value as some players start dumping, and then others, and then others, and then others, and all of a sudden the dollar starts to really get crippled and lose value, and they hit our shores, creating a massive increase in the amount of dollars that hit our shores because there's way more outside the country than in, as the stockpiling of dollars to buy oil has necessitated that. The byproduct of that is spiked interest rates to the moon to compensate for that inflation, which then blows up not only stocks, bonds, and real estate and the dollar, but the banking system as well. And have no fear, Lael Brainerd is here. She's a modern monetary theorist who was at the Fed, who worked with MIT in development of the new central bank digital currency that Biden signed into executive order that ushered in FedNow, which came out a few months ago, which is Venmo or Zelle on steroids, backed by the Fed. She's a modern monetary theorist. So if you bring everyone down to their knees because everything collapses, and it was those bitches who did it to us, they did it to us, how could they? And remember, where's the debt go? Who do we owe all the debt to? Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and government military pensions. That $100+ trillion is owed to us. Who's buying all the bonds that the Chinese are no longer buying, that the Japanese are selling, Saudis are selling, Russia has already sold? All of these countries dumping bonds. Who's buying them all? Well, yeah, that's us. The hedge funds and the investors chasing yield. So if indeed there really was a plan to allow this to happen, the majority of the debt that we owe is to ourselves. A whole hell of a lot easier to issue as a modern monetary theorist a central bank digital currency to us and make us whole by signing on the dotted line and taking that CBDC, which many of the people watching this show would say, I ain't never taken that, until your bank blows up, your 401k blows up, everything blows up and the federal government comes on at 6 o'clock at night and says, listen, we understand what's happened. We're very sorry. We're going to rein things in this country and be more protectionist of our own interests, and we're going to issue a new central bank digital currency. If you take it, you'll be made whole. Now, again, this is me trying to put all of these facts together and come up with a logical Occam's razor, call it, a logical outcome. But when the majority of the debt that we owe is to ourselves, it makes this whole situation a whole lot easier. And rather than pulling Bernanke and Janet Yellen and all of the former Fed and current Fed and Treasury chairs out and doing what happened to Marie Antoinette out in the town square, you can blame a villain. And that villain did this to us, inciting a rallying cry. So am I trying to connect the dots? Sure I am. But look at all of the facts that are coming or pointing to something happening. And I think it happens long before 2031, when we have to borrow every single penny of discretionary spending to do anything, including funding our military, which is supposedly the biggest in the world, and we're yet, blowing off bombs like they're gumballs. It's a situation that I don't think can last under the current path that we are on right now, and something's going to break, whether it emanates from the BRICS or from within, and whether it's intended or not. I think the day of reckoning is coming.
Andy eloquently discusses the precarious state of national debt and the Federal Reserve's limited options, inflate or default. He paints a scenario where external entities, disillusioned by the U.S.'s burgeoning debt and inflated currency, could trigger a financial meltdown by dumping the dollar. This potential crisis could lead to skyrocketing interest rates, collapsing markets, and a crippled banking system. He hints at a sinister plan where this economic downfall could be strategically used to introduce a central bank digital currency, shifting the debt burden inwards. The narrative Schectman weaves is one of impending doom, where external forces and internal policies converge, leading to a catastrophic financial crisis. And yes, don't forget to subscribe and share this video widely. Thank you.
Sandman, where he believes there's already 150 countries that have agreed, or somewhere in that neighborhood, agreed to dump the dollar in unison at one point. But what is that one point? When are they ready to do that? When is the critical mass? When do they have enough influence on multiple levels to make that trade or to make that move? I don't know. But Michelle, to me, you don't see these types of moves that are accelerating in these relationships, that are accelerating in the right. Verbiage that we hear, the rhetoric that we hear, without there being something very substantial behind it. And again, I have a curse, and my curse is I see things, always have, I think, long before they happen. And I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to put all of this together and see it. Now, what is the fuse that ignites it? What is the springboard or the impetus that makes that moment where countries forsake the dollar? I don't know what it is or when it is, but I will tell you, I honestly do believe that this is the ultimate goal. And when you put it into context with an administration who's, as we've talked about before, our main economic advisor, his whole thesis, Jared Burson, is to lose the reserve status and look at weaponizing the dollar. Look, if the reserve status was so important to us, then why the hell would we tell Saudi Arabia and the rest of the world we're going green when it is the linchpin to the dollar hegemony, the petrodollar? But we're going green, so it's all right, you guys. We're going a different direction. And the countries that they are uniting with, which represent the majority of human population, are the ones that have all of the world's oil and natural gas and rare earth metals and all of the things that you need to build an advanced society. So it just doesn't make sense.
Right. In conclusion, Andy Schectman's insightful analysis paints a vivid picture of a looming financial crisis rooted in geopolitical maneuvers and economic strategies. His compelling narrative not only highlights the fragility of the global financial system, but also urges us to stay alert to the subtle yet powerful shifts shaping our economic future.